Hello, everyone, and welcome to FECast episode 29. I am going to Worlds. Yes, that's the title. Hi, my name is Sunyveil. I am the host, and I am joined by my friend Stormblessed. How are you doing this weekend?
I'm doing very well. It was a very exciting tournament. Although I had no idea what was going to happen in the third metagame, so I didn't do very well. But was pleased to see you do well.
Thank you. I also, admittedly, didn't exactly know what was going to go on in the metagame. In fact, well, we'll get to that later. First, let's just get a few things out of the way. We're going to go through all the news for the upcoming week of Eternal, as we always do. We're going to talk about the past week's tournament, next week's tournament, the changes to Expedition, and a few other news items. So let's get started. Before I want to mention anything else, I want to plug the Fantasy League that we're doing in the Friends of Eternal Discord. That's right. If you miss sports and you miss fantasy sports, we are going to have Fantasy Eternal. You can prove yourself as the ultimate spreadsheet card game player. So I won't go into it in too much detail here, but basically you're going to pick a bunch of players, and based on how well they do in ECQs, you'll earn points, and that will compare to other people in the league. We've got 7 people signed up so far. If this sounds interesting to you, go to FEFL News in the Friends of Eternal Discord. It's open to anyone, and it is open to anyone at any time. If you want to get in for this first ECQ, you do have to submit your draft picks by Thursday night at midnight. But even after that, anyone is welcome to join at any time.
Sounds like a lot of fun. I'm going to be participating as well because, it's kind of the meaningless rooting for people that humans are designed to do. And so it sounds like a good time.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. All right, let's talk about last week's tournament, which I won. Did I mention that? I might have mentioned that once or twice on social media. The Throne Championship this past weekend. I brought Monofire and made it all the way to the finals and won. I guess I'll just go over my entire process. I think this actually starts all the way back weeks ago when we were at the beginning of May when the cutoff for buys was happening for this season. Because I had 70 points. I don't know if you remember this conversation in Discord, but I had 70 points. I needed 75 for buys, and there was an hour left in the season or something, and I had to reach Masters in something, and the closest I was Diamond 2, and I loaded up Jock D's list and won 10 out of my next 11 games and barely reached Masters before the cutoff, and that gave me the 75 points that I needed for the 3 buys that I had for this tournament this past weekend.
And I think the buys ended up being fairly important, actually. It wasn't just, obviously the original style with the completely absurd, you go straight to day 2, and the absurd way of getting all those points was just way too much. But these buys basically gave you a 2-win edge, obviously a 3-win edge over the rest of the field, right? So the difference between having the buys or not is, the difference between going 18 and 10 in ECQ, or you could get 17 and 11 versus 20 and 8, right? So it was actually a fairly impactful difference, I felt like, looking at what happened.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think that's part of the relevance. And I mean, I will admit I didn't put that much preparation into this tournament. There's a screenshot of the Discord where on the day of the tournament I post, I don't know what to play. What's the tournament metagame look like? Of course, this means I'm probably going to win it all, so I kind of called it. Anyway, I'll talk about the deck that I did play. Someone mentioned Monofire Aggro Control, just kind of mentioned it in kind of an offhand comment about Monofire being a possibility for this weekend's tournament, and that actually really piqued my interest because Jack is obviously really powerful. Milos is really powerful. You get access to all of the utility powers that no other deck can really play or take advantage of as much as Monofire can. And I just kind of put together a few builds and played some games with it. It felt good. I made a few changes. One of the big things, and this is where Yeti Cookmaster comes in. I know a lot of people were laughing about Yeti Cookmaster and being in the list, and to be fair, it probably should be an Incendiary Slagmite. But I had the 3-1 that deals damage. It's like the Ankle Cutter or something.
Ankle Cutter,
if you deal damage, if you deal damage to something that has lifesteal and endurance, you kill it, and the ability just never mattered. So I was looking for a card that also could attack for 3 with a more relevant ability. And I was just scrolling through cards the night before the tournament. I saw, was it the night before or was it the day of? I don't even remember. It was probably the day of. Because I don't think I was on Monofire until the day of anyway. And I just saw Cookmaster. I was like, screw it. This is what I'm playing.
So while Sunny admits that Incendiary Stalagmite would probably be better, considering that it's only single fire, so it doesn't hurt with Seal Devotion, and it takes away their best market card, such as Stormhalt Knife. I will say that back during the spoiler review of Echoes of Eternity, I said that Yeti Cookmaster had potential, and Sunny laughed at me. And who's laughing now? The person that won the ECQ, probably.
Oh my god. Why do I keep on bringing you back onto this cast? What's up, editing Sunyveil here. I did some digging into our old episode, and yeah, Stormblessed and I said that this card was playable. Here's a clip from that episode 15.
Will be a 5/1 attacker in the Yeti deck quite often. It should be decent in Expedition.
Yeah, it's going to be great when you can jump kick it, I think. I don't think it's insane, but I do think it's good enough to make the Yeti deck. I mean, you would play a 2-cost 5/1. A 2-cost 3/1 isn't terrible.
I think it's a solid roleplay in the Yeti deck, but nothing exceptional.
Hey, well, you were wrong about one thing. Remember all the times you said that Transpose was horrible? Turns out Transpose was a big part of the Huru decks.
It's true. I still think it's pretty bad, but I didn't see it coming.
And I didn't see that coming either. I actually think it did exactly what it was trying to do in those decks. It also, like you could get it back with Prodigious Sorcery along with a Hailstorm or something. I think it was really neat tech by whoever developed it.
I think the thing that I didn't consider was that people wouldn't play the full set of 4 transposes while they also played Merchant, right? So you could play Merchant, like 3 transpose and like 2 or 3 cards that cost 4 while still getting access to your Scourge of Frosttomes and your Haru control deck. So I didn't think of that innovation. But yes, I was wrong about Transpose. Transpose ended up being better than I thought it would.
We also saw in the semifinals that the fast face Aegis from Transpose actually was really relevant against Keith Peleg. Keith ended up taking that down, but
it was so relevant that the guy didn't win.
No, it was so... Oh, the guy playing Transpose. Yeah, no, but Keith lost that game, and...
Sure.
Yeah, okay, whatever. Anyway, so I'm super thrilled to be going to Worlds, joining Eternal All-Stars like the Boxer, Lights Out Ace, and Bruised by God, and I'm excited to see who else will be joining me. Right now, just to recap, they showed a graphic with all of the world slots. We've got 6 ECQ winners: Bruised by God, Kolakoma, Lights Out Ace, they misspelled Twanbon into Twanban. I still can't stop laughing about that. Twanbon, Virgin Mary, the Boxer. We have the returning champion Adrius. We have seasonal winners Not Arg, Emil29, Nico Abba, and myself now. We're going to have 2 more seasonal winners, 3 more ECQ winners, 4 draft champions, and 4 wild cards. And this is interesting speculation. They haven't said anything about how they're actually going to decide who gets these wild card slots. Have they?
My dream is that a wild card slot will be filled with a Scion Draft tournament. You guys remember Scion Draft is sort of the pseudo cube that Eternal had? I think it would be really awesome if one of the wild card slots was filled with some sort of absurd Scion Draft tournament, because that sounds obscenely awesome. I wouldn't want like the whole thing to be nothing but Scion Draft tournament, like all 4 wildcard slots are Scion Draft. That'd be a little silly, but I think one Scion Draft tournament winner would be pretty sweet.
That would be one interesting way of doing it. The way that I think would be awesome is if they picked the 3, like gave 3 discretionary invites to people who just missed several times. And then one that was just a community vote.
So Keith Peleg.
So yeah, Keith Peleg. I think M. Gallop. We were talking about this in I'll mention where we were talking about this in a second, but we were talking about this, who has done the best. And I think that Keith Peleg and M. Gallop are the 2 front runners, both sure. With, Gallop has 3 top 8s. Keith Peleg has 2 finals appearances and just like a slew of other big finishes. And I think that those 2 are head and shoulders above the rest of the field. There are a bunch of people that you can make cases for, like Collector, GHP, and folks like that. But yeah, like I think that would be one way of doing it, and then one just be a community vote where we all just vote for Yodabite or something.
Oh my god, that doesn't sound like the greatest thing ever. But
well, I think it would be interesting. Like for baseball, they vote for All-Star, vote people in for the All-Star game. This is pretty similar, I think, except there's a lot of money on the line. Okay, maybe it's not that similar. Well, whatever. Okay, so I mentioned that we were talking about this. I did a stream the day after the tournament where I just went through and looked at all the mistakes I made in the tournament. I reviewed the broadcast. I was fortunate enough to have so many games that were on stream, especially considering I wasn't recording my games. And so I just looked back at all of those and tried to figure out how many misplays I made. How could I have played better? I think I played pretty well. I don't know what's the community consensus on how well I played Stormblessed.
It depends on who you ask.
I guess so. A lot of people said that I got really lucky, which is absolutely true. I got tremendously lucky. But I think I also played pretty well. I think that, Keith Bailey also played very well. But despite that, there were a lot of misplays, both on my side and my opponent's side. And it was really interesting to watch the tape and just look at where I could have, eked out one more point of damage or like preserved a 1-1 or something like that. Because, that type of stuff matters. And while it might not matter every game, it's free percentage points. And if you can tighten up those screws and just have an airtight game, well, then you can be like the Boxer in top 8 for ECQs. Holy cow. We looked at the Boxer's results and it's like a win, 2 top 4s, and a top 8.
So if you want to check out this video, it is either on Sunny's YouTube channel or it's one of Sunny's VODs on his Twitch page.
Yeah, and we'll link it in the description. I also did a post-game interview myself. Chat interviews me right after the tournament. I'll also put a link to that.
In the past, Sunny has liked to, whenever possible, to interview ECQ winners. So the joke here is that he interviewed himself because he's interviewed other winners in the past. It's not just a vanity thing.
Yeah, we had interviews for we had I'm So Bad, who came in second, and then also Tobo, for example. I don't remember who else. I think I've tried to get some other people, but
was I'm So Bad the one with Cola Coma? Was that the Reanimator one?
Yeah, that was the mirror in the finals 2 friends meeting. That was cool.
Yeah, that was sweet.
All right, let's talk about the deck composition. I obviously played Mono Fire, which was not really on people's radar. I think it was a good deck, and I think it's better than the Stone Scar decks. But like Stone Scar was a big player for the tournament, and so were Feln and Huru.
Yeah, I think the metagame ended up sort of I didn't understand what the metagame was kind of coalesced around, but it coalesced around the 3 big Feln, Huru, and Stone Scar, which amounted for, I think like 60% of the field altogether. So, those were the big 3. It was not a rock, paper, scissors metagame. I don't think there was like, Feln beat Huru, beat Stone Scar, whatever. I don't know what the metagame percentages are for each deck beating each other deck, because there also are various, versions of Huru and Stone Scar and Feln, whatever. Some people are playing different cards in different matchups. Like Stone Scar, there's the more aggro version, there's the more mid-range version, where you're playing like Zuberi versus not Zuberi. But yeah, so those were sort of the big 3 in the metagame, and that Sunny took it from a different angle of being even more aggressive than Stone Scar and getting to take advantage of these sweet utility powers and managed to crush all of them. And you get very lucky, as you said, but you played your outs, right? If you're like, make them have Hailstorm every time. They don't have Hailstorm, then you just get there, but you can't play around the Hailstorm.
Yeah, the key there is I can't be a Blight Moth, I can't be a Hailstorm. I'm just going to play like they never have it. I think one other thing we should mention is Turn to Seed is a huge part of these Primal decks. I mean, Turn to Seed was just an insane card. It seemed like whenever anyone played it over the course of the weekend, just getting every single Akari off of someone's player's out of a player's deck or something like that.
Or Jack,
yeah.
I mean, Jack still got value immediately, but so did Akari, right? Preventing any future Jacks means that basically, or if you can hit like Jack and Milos in a fire-based aggro deck, you remove so much potential aggression out of them. It's crazy. It's like you have so much less to worry about because there's so much less, surprise, sudden 3-4 damage coming your way.
I guess, but like even then, I have Merchant for Warhelm / Phoenix Stone and also Thunder of Wings. So
never beat a Phoenix Stone in my life. Who could possibly beat Phoenix Stone?
It is pretty hard to beat. That is true. All right. So let's move on. That was the Throne Championship. We have a new promo this week. It's Daraka Loyal Guardian. It's not very good and constructed. In fact, I think this is just a worse version of the Daraka that already exists. So probably don't try to play it this weekend is my advice. And speaking of this weekend, we've got an ECQ coming up. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it, Stormblessed?
Well, if you are in the FE Discord, you should be checking out the #tournament chat, because Canmilk is doing some data gathering. If you would like to submit your games or just peruse what FE has done, you can check out there and see what the best performing decks in the community are. But, Expedition's had a lot of change-ups since the last tournament. There's been a whole balance patch, and perhaps more importantly, we discussed about this last time, the big changes are that Rectifier is kind of dead, and Machinations is a lot more expensive. For example, Sunny's ECQ deck, the FTP deck, cannot be played anymore because, one of its big things was that you got to have Machinations in the market. You can't do that anymore in a 3-faction deck, or put it in the market at all, actually. But the other big change is that there are now 73 new cards added to Expedition. Most of them are commons and uncommons with one exception, and a lot of them are, fairly bad, or rather are more for draft than for constructed, like, who's going to be playing a Spell Strike Sorceress in constructed? Not many people, but there are a number of notable standouts, and I will be mentioning them in part of groupings, not individually. So one big thing is that they've added a bunch of discard outlets for some discard synergies that you can have in Expedition. They've given us Herald Song, Master Cartographer, Learned Herbalist, Chairman's Contract, Gust Strider, Pompous Historian, and, I guess Ambrand Shoveler if you want to go very deep. But all of these together allow you to throw cards from your hand to your void or from your deck to your void just like that. The obvious inclusion is for something like Fell Rock. If you discard a Fell Rock and you have your influence, pull it out on turn 3 or turn 2 or whatever if you're playing Feln Stranger or something. If you're playing turn 1 Horus Traver, turn 2 Horus Traver, Gust Rider, game. But other fun things I've seen include Unlock the Vault. You can use these to discard your big relics to then pull them back out, Unlock the Vault, as well as digging towards your Unlock the Vault. I don't know exactly how much is there, but it's interesting. Learn Herbalist also notably even ramps you. It doesn't just draw a discard, it puts the spell in your hand, which is a different kind of benefit and downside. Another big package they added was a Relic Synergy package, which Pompous Historian is both a Relic card and a discard synergy card that they added. So as far as Relic Synergies go, they gave us Pitfall Trap, Left Fly Robotomy, Boot Knife, Cabal Scavenger, Monolith Guardian and Fire, Heirloom Blade, and Illicit Armament. So there's 2 types of Relic strategy synergies they gave us here. They gave us Heirloom Blade and Illicit Armament, which are probably 2 of the biggest cards they've added, especially for the ECQ, because there's that Nightmare Gates deck, which I don't know how good or consistent is, but if you can, for 2 power, use Heirloom Blade to sacrifice a Unfamiliar Interloper, and then use Nightmare Gates to make the Heirloom Blade a 9/9 relic weapon for 2 power, that's kind of huge. Illicit Armament also just makes your spectral sights bigger. Boot Knife is interesting again. If you make it bigger, you can make a 6/6 quick draw weapon, which is pretty nice. Overall, the biggest downside is that they didn't give us Rat Cage. Yeah, they gave us everything else for those relic synergies except for Rat Cage, which is a little disappointing, but it'll be what it is. We'll make do.
Rat Cage is a pretty dangerous card.
Yeah, I don't blame them for not including it in Expedition at all, but it is kind of fun. It's like, here's every other card except for the linchpin of the deck. So, but Left Eye Bottom also opens up a different, interesting, fun deck, not necessarily ECQ worthy, but you can play it with the 2/1 flyer that also lets you sacrifice a relic to make a 6/4. Left Eye Bottom allows you to pay 1 to sacrifice a relic to kill a unit, but you can play it with Bottled Storm and Waystone Gate in order to sacrifice them for a lot cheaper than their normal 9 power investment to get their effect off, their Entomb effect, which has been a lot of fun, if not necessarily good. They also added all 5 other 3-faction displays to Expedition, which is really big. The most important one, notably, will pretty obviously be Display of Ambition, which allows you to return a Jek and a Kato from your void and take 2 damage, or kill a Icaria or Airmont for 3 power, which is going to be pretty huge to have this flexibility. So be on the lookout for the possibility of FJS taking over again. The rest of them, Display of Honor might be decent, but Display of Vision is still awful. So, and Display of Knowledge also notably is part of the Relic Synergy package. They also Direwolf also has added a number of removal options to Expedition. Notably, they've added Eileen's Choice, Slay, Feeding Time, and Lightning Storm, with I think Lightning Storm standing out among the bunch because it's a kind of board clear and primal that we hadn't had before.
It's such a unique effect compared to what we have in Expedition right now. So I think that that's going to be the most important card out of these, even though Slay's fantastic, but we have Cast into Shadow, which is, it's not the same definitely, but it has a similar function where there's nothing like Lightning Storm right now.
Yeah, and the benefit, feeding time versus Fell Strike is the difference is basically, you stop recursion, which is relevant, but it's also 4, so it's not really that big of an impact. Eileen's Choice maybe can see play in a TGP control deck, but there's not really many 4-power attackers attacking you at this point in time. There will be some, but it's not as ubiquitous as it might be because Jek is a 4-power attacker, but it only really has 2 power, so you can't Eileen's Choice a Jek.
Yeah, that seems really bad against any sort of Aurelian Supplier or Jek deck that's not going to have an expensive spell or a big attacker attacking you.
Yeah, we'll get to that, but I think Praxis Aggro is sort of the level 1 deck. But yeah, I think Lightning Storm's the biggest inclusion. It's kind of like Air Monster designs, but in Primal. But it is very different because it can kill 3/2s that cost 3, or you can combine it with other damage. Let's say you combine it with Blazing Salvo, which is obviously a natural fit for a Lightning Storm, which costs 2 to put in a 2-cost market. So if you Blazing Storm a Milos and Jack to grab Lightning Storm, you kill the Milos/Jack as well as any other 2 health creatures they have. Toda Pioneers and Katos and O1s or whatever. So Lightning Storm will probably be a good pick. Other cards they included, which just have been played other times, most notably is Gift of Battle, which has been part of some Blitz decks. I don't think there's necessarily a Blitz deck that's going to happen here, but it is notable. And Unstable Form, which is notable for being unstably fun. So that's my rundown of the new cards added to Expedition. Sort of put them into chunks, little packages that you can digest. So moving on, we now have a new Expedition format to discuss in general. So the level 1 deck, as Sunny alluded to earlier, is I think the Praxis Aggro deck. There's a variety of versions of it. There's sort of the bigger version, which kind of plays the Dragon, the Eclipse Dragon, which I think is a little bit worse because the Eclipse Dragons get jacked out. But there's also the very low to the ground Praxis Strangers, and there's slightly bigger Praxis Strangers, and there's just their Praxis Aggro. But playing Jack, Kato, Carver, Aurelian Supplier seems like a very good base for a deck. Do you agree, Sonny?
Yeah, it seems like it. I'll be honest. If you guys are wondering why I'm just letting Stormblessed talk for a long time, it's because I've played exactly 1 game of Expedition since the changes hit, and considering I won the tournament this past weekend, my motivation for spiking this next ECQ is not that high. So I'm glad that I have Stormblessed around to give us the rundown of all this information.
You don't want to two-peat, Sonny, get 2 in a row? 2 weekends in a row, 2 wins in a row?
Look, if I make day 2, I'm going to work. That was the other thing. I don't know if you followed this in chat, but yeah, I usually work on Sundays, so I had to cancel work like a very irresponsible person in order to be able to play. I mean, it obviously ended up working out, but so like if the world's invite isn't on the line, I'm not gonna cancel work in order to play a tournament for the shot of getting a couple $100. It just doesn't seem like a good idea from me from a professional standpoint.
To be fair, the EV of attending this tournament was pretty huge, though.
Yeah, because you put nothing in.
Well, no, okay, sorry. The value you received was probably higher than going to work for 1 day. But yes, professionalism is important, and I would not recommend for all you people out there, don't skip work to play card games.
Yeah, don't be like me. Gosh, I'm such a terrible example. I work with kids too. Like, holy cow, I'm just...
Okay, so moving on from Sunny's being a bad example for humankind in general. So the expression meta is interesting in that there's a variety of incredibly powerful cards that sort of are taking over the metagame that aren't sort of... There's not really like a synergy-based deck out there. There's no cultists. There's no machinations kind of thing going on. But what there is you have like Ikari and Aramont, you have Jex, you have Miloses, you have Turn to Seeds, you have some Shenra Speaks, you have all the displays now. And so there's less synergy, but there is a wider variety of decks. Basically, you want to pick a couple of these really powerful cards and kind of throw them together and find out the best base to support these incredibly powerful cards. Because if you're not playing at least a couple of the most powerful, like a couple of these powerful cards, what are you doing, right? Like, if you're not playing either Ikari or Jek or Turn to Seed or Shenra Speaks, what is your deck doing? Probably it's not doing as many powerful things as you could be. So even though it seems like there's some very stupid cards out there, like Jek, as Sunny always keeps saying, Jek is completely busted, right? It's like one of those powerful things.
We saw that in full display at the at the Throne Championship. I went from having no chance to win in any way, shape, or form, and then into winning. So, like, yeah. It's really funny hearing you preach this, Stormblessed, because you didn't play Jek at the last at the last tournament, right?
I didn't play Jek in the last 2 tournaments, as a matter of fact.
The
last
goodness.
tournament, I had no idea what to do because I wasn't confident in my opinion, throw metagame. When you're not confident, you should probably just go for the aggro like somebody did, but I just took I was like, just have some fun, and I took a volatility again because I love that deck, and I did have a good time. I had some bad beats, like Boxer got 4 golems and played golem into golem, and then drew the next 2 golems in the top third of his deck, so that was pretty bad. But I had a really fun game versus Spellcrag. I'm just going to quickly mention this because I think it's funny. It's a good story. Versus Spellcrag, which people like to say that Spellcrag is a bad matchup for volatility, and that's fairly true, but in this game, it was a 15-turn game, though it felt much longer, where I played Lumen Reclaimer on them to stop their prodigious sorcery. And then, like, 7 turns later, I played Luminary Hammer myself to stop Savage Incursion from making a bunch of dragons. I played Wrath of Caiaphas 3 times face up. Once when they had face agers, twice to make them just change their hand up. I got rid of their Scourge of Frostholm by Wrath of Caiaphasing. It was this incredibly long, grindy game that I somehow won. I guess they just never found a prodigious sorcery, and I think I got, like, kind of lucky, but, like, it was just absurd. Just playing 3 Wrath of Caiaphas in the Spellcrag, 2 Lumen Reclaimers, just absurd nonsense.
That does sound pretty epic and pretty story-worthy, I must say.
But yeah, so current expedition. Back to current expedition.
Right, I have one more thing to say about that. In Throne, there are a lot of really good cards, right? Like, Jack might be the best one of them all, or, like, Turn to Seed might be the best one of them all. But the difference between Jack and, like, the average playable card in Throne is smaller than the difference between Jack and the average playable card in Expedition, right? So, like, if you're not playing Jack, or if you're not playing Turn to Seed, you're giving up a lot of equity in how good those cards are, especially in Expedition tournaments. So I really urge people out there to, play these cards that everyone is saying are super busted.
So the interesting comparison I'd like to make to Sunny and the rest of you is compare this style of there's these incredibly powerful cards like Ikaria and Jack and Turn to Seed and Shenron Speaks, whatever, and how you can fit these into a variety of decks, right? There's Mono Shadow, there's sort of Justice Mono Shadow, there's Xenon Mono Shadow, and now there's FJS Mono Shadow. Jack has, FTP Jack, Skycrag Jack, Dracano Jack, Stonescar Jack. Milos obviously is a variety of decks. There's Praxis, Turn to Seed is in a variety of control decks. Shenron Speaks is in, like, one control deck. And all the displays obviously do things. Compare these mass variety of decks with their, like, linchpin powerful card to before, where cards were less powerful, right? Tazbu was probably the most powerful card in Expedition, and it's less powerful than Jack or Ikaria.
Yeah.
But Tazbu by itself, and the rest of the card pool in 2. But we had one powerful deck back then. We had Argenport, and before we kind of had, like, Cultists. So now we have a wider variety of decks, but we have more polarized cards. How do you feel about that, Sonny?
I've got really mixed feelings about it. I'm just glad that, like, the way the formats behave, like, and the the profile of it is constantly changing. I think it's good. Like, they're giving us different looks and ways for deck builders and innovators to try to gain an edge by figuring out how to build the best deck for the format. So, like, I think one isn't necessarily better or worse than the other. I just think that I think that's interesting to figure out. I guess it does run into the problem of games are super duper swingy. Like I said, you can be in a position where you can't possibly lose, and then you get jacked, and then you lose, and that can be a bit unfun. But I don't know. I'm glad that, like, the formats and internal are constantly changing, and I think that's one of the best things about the game.
So then the other piece thing that I wanted to mention is that there's been a lot of new formats recently. Now, for most players, this is less relevant, because if you're not, like, hyper competitive playing in these quarterlies, which only had, like, 400 people in them, then it matters kind of less to you. But for the competitive side of things, we've for 3 weeks in a row, we've had roughly 4 to 7 days to figure out entirely new formats. So it started with the Expedition Quarterly, had just a new campaign come out with Jack and Turn to Seed being, like, destroying everything, warping everything, where you had to figure out how that worked. And then the week after, we had the balance changes on May 12th, which meant that Golem decks kind of disappeared. And so that resulted in crazy new metagame that had to be figured out. And then finally, now we have another new expedition that has balance changes and the new cards added, which it turns out that it might not necessarily be as new as expected, with the biggest change probably being that Machinations got nerfed. But the fact that you do have these new avenues to explore, and that you have to consider all these new stuff 3 weeks in a row is a lot of brain power, right? It might doing it a couple times might be fine, but, like, I know there's a lot of people in the Barbs are very tired of, just worn out from having to consider all these new formats at once. Sunny's like, I like this, but he's also like, I'm not interested in exploring this new space. So he's interested in it, but not actually interested in it.
I have the luxury of not feeling pressured to do my best at this next tournament. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think in general it's generally a good thing to have tournaments be, like, right when there are changes. But I guess having 3 tournaments back to back to back upon 3 different sets of changes is pretty ridiculous. I don't know, like, if the player base was big enough and there this was just the normal, if there was a tournament every week and it was a different format like every week, I actually think it would be good, because you'd pick like, 2 tournaments a month to play or something, and you'd work toward those. You'd spend, instead of trying to play every tournament every week, you might, play, work hard toward a tournament 2 weeks from now or something like that.
I agree that if things were bigger, I mean, you always got to compare things to like Magic or whatever, because you can't escape that comparison. But in Magic, there's so many cards and like so many tournaments, that you have like modern specialists and legacy specialists, standard specialists or whatever. But in Eternal, we kind of don't have this luxury. So if there was this sort of tournament every week kind of thing, then I think that it wouldn't be that big of a deal, because, but it's also like, because in Eternal, the expectations, you play the tournaments when they happen, because they've only like one a month, that you kind of can sort of get trapped into wanting to explore all this. For example, I think probably what I should have done is I should have just not looked at Throne. I think I'd looked at Throne too much, and I should have just like, used the rest of my team or FE or whatever, and, found a deck that way instead of trying to explore Throne myself, because and just like be like, oh, I'm just gonna just look at Expedition, and we just look at Expedition,
Yeah, I mean, how awesome would it be is if we got to a point in Eternal where teams just have like a couple people designated for each format. Like, for example, this is not based on reality, but like if there's a tournament every week, and for Throne Week or whatever, I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to play whatever Keith Peleg recommends, because Keith Peleg is the master at Throne. And then for the next week, I'm going to work with Chamomilk on, whatever expedition. And if there's another format, I'll just go to whoever I trust for that format. I think it would be a really cool place to get to the point where that is what Eternal is. Now, obviously, we're not there yet, but maybe it's not so much just a matter of like what tournaments are going on, just like what the establishment in it is. Because I think that like, if we had alternating Throne and Expedition big tournaments every week for a year or like a couple of years, it would just naturally sort itself out that way, where there would be specialists for one format versus specialists for another, because you just wouldn't be able to play all of them. And I think that would be a really cool place, especially with like team dynamics for Eternal to be. So I understand that people are getting burnt out by trying to figure out all the tech for all of this, but maybe it's a blessing in disguise.
I mean, it seems like at the very least that this sort of structure is going to happen again potentially. I guess we don't know for sure exactly how it's going to go down, because there's only one quarterly left, and then that'll be it for this season of competitive Eternal. But it shows that Direwolf does at least have the capability to, for 1 month, have sort of the tournaments in a row. We don't know exactly if all of the employees would like to come back, every week to cast a tournament or whatever. But
yeah, there's also been talks about like third-party casters. I mean, hey, Direwolf. Now that I won an ECQ, I'm happy to cast. I think that would be a lot of fun.
We did have the community casted tournament, which was the other, what was it, the last year tournament?
The ETS. All right, so it looks like this weekend is going to be really just, it's totally up in the air right now. I mean, there are so many new changes. I don't think that people have figured out the best deck. If they have, they're keeping extremely quiet about it, but there's just so much room to explore. I think that, it's really just up to those out there that are willing to take chances and try out different things and really work on and polish lists. I think this is really anyone's tournament. So all those out there competing this week, good luck. I'll definitely be playing, but I'm just going to take whatever deck is handed to me by like Chamomilk or Keith Peleg or someone from the Discord. So I'm just going to take it easy for this one.
And of course, you can always, there's always room to deck build. There's always room to brew. There, people are like, everything's so stale, there's no room to brew, Like, sometimes, yes, with, like, the Argenport metagame, it was basically Argenport.
Yeah, but this is the complete opposite. Like, yeah, there is not stale at all. If anyone says it's stale, they're either trolling or just totally out of their mind.
They might say dislike the metagame, but it is absurdly not stale. And then, of course, just like before, people said, like, like, deck doesn't exist, and then Sonny brewed up a mono fire deck the day of the quarterly and ended up crushing it, so, there's always room to explore.
Yeah, a lot of people were, like, joking about Cookmaster just because it was so off the wall, but a lot of people were like, Oni Ronin in 2020, what is this? And it won. I mean, actually, that war cries were incredibly relevant, too, so joke's on them. But, yeah, or you can always take my approach, and you can just check out the Friends of Eternal Discord. Lots of people post their lists before playing. It's open to everyone. everyone. Some of these players are very good. I mean, we've got just a huge wide range of people based on, like, you know, promising newcomers, veterans that have tons of tournament success, and they just post their list there. If you want to find them, check out the Discord. Links in the description. Of course, where would FECast be without our lovely patrons? We had a new patron last week or 2 weeks ago, Sigma Tank. Welcome to the team. And also a new patron this week, Outside Bava. Thank you so much for your contributions to FECast and Friends of Eternal. They join Yeast Out, D-Dub, Chrissier, Chamomilk, and Work Done Son as the people who support FECast and keep us going. So thank you so much to them. If you would like to be like these people and contribute to FECast and keep us going, you can head on over to patreon.com/Friends of Eternal.
Thank you so much to all the patrons. We appreciate your support.
I think that's about it for this weekend. I mean, we kind of laid the groundwork, but we can't really come up with too many conclusions. So good luck to everyone that's playing this weekend. Do you have anything else you need to add, Stormblessed?
No, I think I'm good. Thanks for listening to another episode of FECast, and I hope you would continue to enjoy the game of Eternal.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone out there, and until next time, we will see you in the friend zone. Friends of Eternal is awesome, but you know what's even more awesome? Our amazing patrons over at patreon.com. That's right, Friends of Eternal now has a Patreon where you can help support the content and initiatives of Friends of Eternal. If you enjoy FECast and you enjoy the Piloting Club and you want to join the people that make all this possible and sustainable, be sure to head over to patreon.com/Friends of Eternal and consider donating. Every little bit does help. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time on FECast.